with. Now, as for his role as a small d Democrat, time doesn't permit me to say much about it, and I suspect that the Justice may himself have something to say that will bear on it. But in his really very elegant James Madison lecture at NYU not too long ago, and in his quite wonderful lecture on Justice Brandeis as a legal seer in Kentucky this February, and in what I think will be a landmark work, his forthcoming Tanner lectures at Harvard this November, at which he's afforded me an advance peek, Stephen Breyer develops a truly powerful frame of reference that displays his vision of the Constitution as a charter of not only what some have called the negative liberty of the moderns, representing independence from state control, but also the positive, active liberty of the ancients, representing participatory self-government. And as I read him, what emerges is an approach to construing both constitutional and statutory texts in a way that maximizes democratic self-governance in the solution of difficult social problems through processes that respect the human dignity and the negative liberty of all participants. And he's too smart to offer that as a panacea, something in which no judgment calls need be made, but he offers it as a means of proceeding that he is prepared to defend with concrete examples drawn from one field after another: free speech, equal protection, privacy, antitrust, prepared to defend as yielding consequences that are more consistent with constitutional democracy than are the methods of interpretation favored by those who would exalt the literal text or a narrow view of history and tradition as the solution to everything. Now, those who read Justice Breyer's growing body of work, both off and on the court, I think soon come to recognize that his truly courageous project, and it's courageous to put yourself out there in full display, all your premises, and here's how my conclusions follow from them. His courageous project of quite transparently setting out how he gets there from here sets him apart, in my view, not just from his colleagues, but from every other recent Supreme Court justice. I was thinking about that. The others who come to mind as brave enough to venture an explicit approach rather than just claiming to decide each case on its own merits without any starting preconceptions, blank slate, as though that were possible. The others who come to mind have spoken and written in largely conclusory terms, each preaching to his or her own choir, while taking jabs at the other side, with justices like Scalia facing right and justices like Brennan and Marshall facing left. But to find justices who speak and write in the Breyer mold, you'd have to really go back to Justice Story with his constitutional treatise, to Justice Holmes in The Path of the Law, to Justice Cardozo in writing The Nature of the Judicial Process, to Justice Frankfurter in his reflections on the reading of statutes. Except that happily for the party of humanity, Steve Breyer has a somewhat more optimistic and humane outlook than all four of those jurists combined. Now, as it happens, and this really struck me because I didn't pick those four after knowing this, as it happens, all four of those justices are in a direct line of succession occupying the seat that Justice Breyer occupies today. And lest anyone imagine that it's something magical about the seat that guarantees greatness, I guess I should tell you that the seat was also previously occupied by such giants as Justice Woodbury and Justice Clifford and Justice Gray. I don't think it's the seat. I think it is the mind and the heart of its occupant. And that is where Justice Breyer is a judge apart. I know this will embarrass him because the man is genuinely humble, but I say exactly what I mean. Much of what accounts for his ability to reach across pre-existing lines of division in absolutely crucial cases like Stenhart, involving partial birth abortion, and Zadvidas, involving the roundup and detention without charge of aliens who have committed minor immigration infractions, and Grutter, involving the individualized consideration of race in producing a diverse graduating class. Much of what allows him to do that is a disarming blend of the pragmatic, the humane, and the hilarious. He cracks people up. In one argument not very long ago, called FCC v. Next Wave, he was talking about how we all learn in law school that literalism doesn't always give you the meaning of a statute. If it says no animals in the park, Justice Breyer said from the bench, it doesn't necessarily apply to a pet oyster. Chew that one over for a while. Disarming is the word for it. And that is how I think he managed to win the support of senators as diverse as Hatch and Kennedy, as he moved from the position of chief counsel of the Senate Judiciary Committee to the First Circuit. He was President Carter's last appointee. It was in that twilight zone in which the conventional wisdom is nobody can possibly get confirmed. But winning the implicit approval of the incoming President Reagan, Steve Breyer was confirmed in December of the preceding year, the year preceding the Reagan presidency. Ultimately, his appointment to the Supreme Court was not seriously opposed in an era when it is unthinkable that a person who has ever said anything in his life, let alone put forth his philosophy, could end up being confirmed without a bloodbath. So it seems to me that we have the honor of hearing a truly remarkable jurist. This August 3rd, shortly before Steve Breyer turns, I think it's 66, if I'm right, he will have spent a decade on the Supreme Court, in addition to his considerable service on the First Circuit and as chief judge of that court. He will, all in all, have served, despite his relative youth for a position so august, nearly a quarter of a century in the federal judiciary. I look forward to helping him celebrate his 86th birthday, after he has served on the court for just over 30 years in August of the year 2024. I will be a mere youngster of 82. Most of you here will be, what, 30, 40, 50? By then, I think Justice Breyer will have won so many converts to his democratic pragmatism that we will wonder what all the shouting was about. So in anticipation of that splendid time, it is my great privilege to give you Justice Stephen Breyer.